Yeah, I dropped my bike. Can't believe it. I've ridden this BMW R1250RT 2,000 miles across France and Spain. I've done another 1,000 miles up in Scotland since then. I've ridden up mountains, tight hairpin bends, I've been on loose gravel surfaces, torrential rain, fully loaded bike, no problems at all. But pulling out of a local filling station and I dropped the thing. In this video I shall tell you the story of how that happened, let you have a look at the damage, and we'll have a little guessing game on how much it's going to cost to fix, and then I'll show you how I fixed it myself without taking it to the dealer. Hooray! Anyway, welcome to CG Rides, or as I perhaps should say, CG Falls Off. And you find me today enjoying the back roads going over towards Dorchester in the south of England. Very nice too. Not a particularly sunny day, but I'm going to take this because we've had just so much rain and horrible weather for weeks now here in the UK, whilst Europe's been on fire. So yeah, crazy weather, not great for biking. And it's been a good 3 months actually since I finished my tour in France and Spain, and if you're wondering where all those videos are, they are slowly getting worked through. Each one is about a day's work, which I never had any idea of before I went on the trip, so I'm going to need to find a faster way of doing that. Anyway, I digress. The bike landed on its right hand side. Obviously it's a BMW, so that means cylinder head cover is gone, ruined, and the wing mirror also took some of the force, and it does bend back, which I think limited the damage, but it is scratched. Then going back, it also landed on the tip of the exhaust, did a bit of damage, and the top box, worst of all, the most expensive bit. So I'm looking at all of this and thinking about how much it's going to cost. So here we play a little game. Pause the video and put in the comments what you think it's going to cost to put this right. Thinking BMW prices. Now I will say I decided not to do anything about the wing mirror or the bottom of the top box. So we're talking about the cylinder head cover, the ignition coil cover there, and the lid of the top box, and some corrective work to the exhaust pipe, I guess. So have a guess in the comments, and I'll tell you how much it was later. You can see how close you got, because I've got to be honest, my initial guess on this was way off. How did I end up dropping the bike? I've only dropped a bike twice now in my long riding history, both BMWs, both on their right hand side, and both times with loads of people watching, just to you know, injure my pride even more. I was actually really tired, I was frustrated, I'd had a bad day, and it all started with the tyres of this bike after we got back from Spain. Those mountain roads, they're really abrasive. They cut the tyres up. I needed some new tyres. I wanted those on before I went to Scotland. So I called my local tyre place. They said they'd call me back later the same day, and they never did. So I ended up going down to Exeter, and I booked it in with a place called Pro Tyre. So I went down to Pro Tyre on a Wednesday morning and waited whilst they did this job, and then the mechanic came in and said, got a problem, can't get your wheel off because I can't remove the exhaust bracket. So this bike has the Akrapovic exhaust on, and there is a clamp that holds the end can onto the pipe, and that had corroded. But worse than that, the captive nut that's used to tighten it up had been sheared off by somebody, so they'd sheared it off and not bothered to fix it. Worse still, this bike was bought approved used from BMW, and I thought they were supposed to give it a very thorough check over. And if a mechanic had been over it, he should have noticed. So I was really angry. I've got this trip in 2 days' time, and I'm being told, you know, I can't get the tyres done that I've already paid for. I started getting really stressed. I just wasn't in a position to deal with it. But there's a new BMW Motorrad dealer in Exeter, so I called them up, expecting them to bend over backwards, tell me to bring the bike straight over, they'll fix that for me and put a new clamp on, and then I could get the tyres changed. But the response I got was a million miles away from that. I will say it was a terrible phone line as well, which didn't help matters. We were talking over each other without realising it, and just very frustrating. And the poor guy, I do empathise with him. The situation is that no one wants to be a mechanic, so they can't hire enough staff, and they've got a huge backlog. So he's telling me we can't do anything until September, because he's not really hearing me properly and understanding what the job is. I'm thinking that's ridiculous for a 5-minute removal of bracket. Anyway, the guys at Pro Tyre, they couldn't believe this, and the mechanic just said, I'm back in on Friday, I'll move my schedule, I'll come in early. If you can come down early, I'll bring in my Dremel from home and I'll cut it off for you and we'll get it all fixed up. And I'll put on a temporary bracket. You can't ask for more than that. Absolutely phenomenal service. After that, I did pop around to the BMW dealer and I ordered the exhaust clamp, and we cleared the air and realised what had happened and the misunderstanding and all the rest of it. So that's all fine. I totally accept the difficult situation they're in. And so then on the Friday, I brought the bike down early and I got the tyres changed. The guy, what a legend. He just Dremeled off the clamp. He didn't damage the exhaust at all. Did a great job, and really appreciate that, and the fact he pushed his other jobs so that I could go on my trip. It's just stellar service. Didn't charge me any extra for that either. So thoroughly recommend Pro Tyre in Exeter. Whilst I was down there, I went and picked up the clamp which had arrived from the main dealer, and I also ordered some replacement parts. Let me step back a bit, back to the Wednesday. So imagine all of this is going on, I'm going back home again after wasting half a day, and it's not a short journey for me. And I'm so frustrated, and I stopped at this filling station, put some fuel in, and the filling station is on a hill. And as you sort of come out, it means that I was going to turn right, which meant I was going to be turning to go down a hill. So you've got this kind of odd camber to deal with, which can be treacherous. And what I should have done is turn left, because at the top of the road, just maybe not even 100 meters up the road, there's a roundabout. So we could have just gone left round the roundabout. That would have been much safer. But I didn't do that. I got stationary traffic in the left lane going up the hill, and the lane coming down the hill seemed empty. There was a gap in the traffic, so I thought I'd go for it. But I was just navigating around a pothole, and suddenly this car has come out of nowhere off the roundabout going down the hill and way too fast. He screamed off the roundabout. And then I'm left with a choice. I can either pull out in front of him and risk it, which would most likely have ended up with me getting knocked off my bike. That would have been pretty nasty. Or I hit the anchors and drop the bike. And of course, these situations, it happens in a split second, but your adrenaline suddenly flows, and so you do get a bit of time, it seems like, to make a decision. And I just made the decision to drop the bike. It seemed like the best thing to do. There were loads of people there watching, just to add to my wounded pride. And there was a group of bikers who were just sort of sat there at the fuel station. They ran out and helped me pick the bike up and dust myself down and all the rest of it. And they really cheered me up, actually. I very quickly relaxed because they were just so kind and friendly. If you happen to be watching, very slim chats that you are, thanks guys. I appreciate it. And I actually ended up feeling sorry for one of them, because one of them had just bought this Yamaha R7 in the beautiful anniversary colours, and he'd hit a deer the day after he picked his brand new bike up and cracked all his fairings. So, you know, it puts everything in perspective. These things happen, don't they? It happens to all of us. You have a lapse in concentration, you do something silly, or you're tired, you're frustrated. I try to be very mindful of those things. If I'm feeling tired and if I'm on a ride and things aren't going well, I will turn around and go home. But just didn't pan out on this day for me. So when I got home, I did do some looking around for parts, but I wasn't sure about colour matching and getting the right thing. So I decided, since I was going on the Friday to get the tyre done, I would call into the dealer, pick up the clamp and ask them to quote me for the cylinder head cover and the ignition coil cover, which is that sacrificial black plastic part. And the price I got, I was astonished. I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, somewhere between £300 and £400, I guess, and it comes out just over 200. Can't remember the exact figure, but I will put it up on screen for you. I didn't order the top box lid from them because I had found a solution to that online, and that was not a particularly easy thing to do, because when you look at the parts fiche for this particular bike in this particular year in this particular colour, Mars Metallic Red, you will find that it doesn't seem to exist. There is no red top box available for this bike, and I tried all the different years and I couldn't find one. But it is the same top box that goes on the R1250RT. It's the same that goes on the K1600 GT. And I knew there was a model of K1600 that came in the the same Mars metallic red colour. So I found that, and from there I managed to find a top box lid. Normally these top box lids go for hundreds of pounds, but in this particular one I found was from a place in the Netherlands, and I think it was 86 euros. I thought I'd got to take a punt on it, but I was expecting it to be completely the wrong part or the wrong colour, and it just said Mars red, it didn't say metallic, and I'm thinking, will it just be a solid colour or is it going to be metallic? Once I paid the shipping and everything else, that's it came to not much over £100. And when it arrived, sure enough, it's the right part. And not only that, it's a better colour match than the one I had. I am being quite picky here, but the original one I had that I damaged is slightly more orange, and this one is bang on for the bike, so it's actually improved the look of the bike. Now I think the reason why it was so cheap is because it has a very small imperfection in the paint, and I do mean small, like a grain of sand small, and I didn't even notice it until a couple of days after, so not worried about that in the slightest. So I got all of the bits for not a lot of money. Let me put the total up on screen. I wasn't worried about fitting the top box lid. I knew that was going to be straightforward, having recently done the brake light, so I've taken it apart already. But I was a little bit concerned about doing the cylinder head cover. I'm not a mechanic at all, but it seemed to me like it should be an easy job. I did a bit of research. The guy at BMW Motorrad said it would be simple enough. He said do it on the side stand and you won't lose much oil, and you could reuse the gasket. So I just thought, well, let's give it a go. So here's how it goes. Just bear in mind I'm narrating this from my bike ride to Dorchester some weeks after I actually did the work, so if I make a few mistakes, don't quite tie up with the B-roll, please forgive me. Now, as I recall, it's 2 screws to get the ignition coil cover off. So this is a sacrificial bit of plastic, this slider thing, and I'll put the individual price for this up on the screen as well. And that exposes then the ignition coil. Getting that out without the right tool would be tricky. I did research this a little bit on Google before I did the job, and I found that you need to have the tool, so I looked that up. I found one on eBay, don't think it was even £10. It's just this aluminium puller that locks into the coil, and then you can just pull on it to pull the gubbins out. It all comes out pretty easy, as you can see. Next job then is to actually remove the oil filler cap. This has a sort of weird shape to it, and I originally was thinking, how am I going to get that off? Do I need to buy a special tool? In fact, I nearly did go and buy a special tool to do that, which was daft because the tool is under the seat of your bike. If you look under the seat, you see you've got this screwdriver with a sort of removable shaft that has 2 different ends on it. But if you look at the handle, the shape of the handle fits perfectly into the oil filler cap. That is the tool you use to get it undone. And if it's a little bit stiff, you just use the shaft as a screwdriver, put it in the hole of the handle, and you get a bit more leverage. So that's how you do that. And I almost forgot this, actually, see me do this at the end, but there is a rubber seal inside this hole, and you need to take that out as well to put into the new cylinder head cover. So next we've got the 3 bolts that hold it on. Now these are captive bolts, and they each have a rubber seal that they go through. They're not easy to remove, so they won't fall out as you undo them. So we undo them, we take the cover off, and it reveals this absolute work of art. Look at it. It's just incredible to look at this shift cam engine, so beautifully machined. I wish you could have some kind of see-through cylinder head cover so you could admire it, but I'm pleased to have seen it. It looks fantastic. Next we've got to set about removing these captive bolts, and I've got to decide where to go here. I'm actually going to turn left and head towards Yeovil, I think. I haven't done that for a long time. Let's do that. Yeah, so we've got to remove these captive bolts. A little bit tricky. What I did was just put the cylinder head cover down on a rag, put my foot on it, and pulled as hard as I could. And sure enough, they do come out. And that's it, really. Next, we got the gasket to clean. So this is reusable. It's just a piece of rubber. It's not something that has to be replaced, but you are supposed to clean it. Now, I don't know if I did the right thing here or not. I used a small amount of brake cleaner just to get the oil off and dried it off. I've probably done something wrong there, feel free to assault me in the comments section if I have. Nonetheless, do that. Then we've got the replacement cylinder head cover, looking all shiny, and we've just got to get those bolts in there and reattach it to the bike. Do everything in reverse basically. The ignition coil then goes in. Got to push it in quite firmly from memory, but you know when it's in and it's gone home. Then we can put the ignition coil cover on, which just finishes off the overall look, and of course swap over that seal for the oil filler cap and replace that. And that's it. There you go. I started up the bike, I checked that it was dry, it wasn't leaking, and everything's been fine since then. I should say that the bolts need to be torqued up. The setting I found from memory, I think it was 10 Newton meters. That's what I've done anyway. I looked it up online and tightened it to the appropriate thing. Checked it again a few days later, everything's good. So yeah, pretty easy job. Now, like I say, I'm not a mechanic. If I can do it, yeah, anybody can do it. So let's move on to the exhaust pipe. This was really just a bit of a bent bracket. There's a scratch in the carbon tip. That's deep, that's not going to buff out, so it is what it is. I thought to bend the bracket back I'd use a piece of wood, but that's where my expertise on wood ends. I spoke to my dad about it. He recommended some hardwood, and indeed had some. So I used a hardwood and a hammer, and I just tapped it gently and persuaded it back into place. It looks a bit tidier now, so I'm happy enough with that. The wing member assembly, I think to replace all of that just for some scratches doesn't make any sense to me. Likewise, the scratches on the bottom side of the top box, I'm figuring that as the bike weathers and ages, they'll become a lot less noticeable. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. Oh, it's a lot of crosswinds up here. Beautiful part of the world though, some lovely scenery in this wide open road. Very nice. So the top box lid, from memory this is pretty easy to do. So you've got the backrest, I think it's 5 screws, and those do hold the lid on actually to the interior part of the top box lid. There's a couple more screws, and then you just remove the whole lid. You've obviously got to remove the brake light assembly as well. I've showed that in the other video I did recently on installing the brake light. That's pretty easy to do, and you'll find then you've got to disconnect the wires and reroute them. Now there's a plug which provides power to the high-level brake light, but also under the backrest I found another of those plugs. And I'd love to know, if anyone knows the answer to this, why that's there. Is there a heated backrest option, possibly, for this bike? I'd quite like to have that. Well, I think my wife would quite like to have that, if it's possible. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you know the answer to that. Anyway, pretty easy then to screw everything back together, and the finished result looks fantastic. And it does diminish the effect of the scratching on the bottom of the top box, because the top lid looks so clean and shiny. So overall, I think the bike hasn't suffered too badly from its drop. I could spend more money and be really picky about these things, but you know, if I go and do that, I'll only end up dropping it again. And I'm sure a bunch of folks out there will be telling me I need to buy engine bars, and I've thought about doing this, but they add to the weight of the bike, and it's already a heavy bike, and I'm not the strongest guy in the world, so I wasn't overly sure on that. And then I look at the price of them, it's actually cheaper to buy a new cylinder head cover. Maybe I'm taking a bit of a risk there, but I've only dropped a bike twice in my riding history. I'm going to take the risk. That's my choice. You might obviously choose to do something differently. I'm really happy. Not that I dropped the bike, obviously I would have much preferred not to have done that, but I'm happy that it's all sorted. It didn't cost an absolute fortune to fix the bike. The bike's got enough value that it was worth doing those things, and I actually enjoyed doing it. It feels good to know that the right-hand cylinder cover was put on by me, and I know nothing. So, yeah, that's a good thing. Is it? Yeah, I think so. I'm rambling. I think it's time to end the video. I hope you enjoyed this little look inside the Boxer shift cam engine. Maybe my bit of misfortune has provided some measure of entertainment or interest for you, in which case great. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Ever so close now to 1,000 subscribers, and when we get to 1,000, it means I get paid like, you know, £4, maybe even £5 a month. That would be something. In a couple of short years, I would have paid for some of the damage that I did. So thanks everybody for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again next time CG rides or falls off. Probably falls off. Dacia Duster.